Okay, Rita, thank you so much for being here. I loved your documentary, Salt in Their Veins, which encouraged me to reach out to you initially. And I'm not sure if you had seen Werner Herzog's Happy People documentary, but the visuals that you had in the early piece of your documentary had almost given me that similar impression. So I was really impressed, and I thought it was just a really cool way of capturing the way of life of it's the Bajau, correct? The Bajau
Yeah,
people?
Bajau.
Okay. So yeah, you have a really beautiful way of capturing the Bajau people and their deeper connection to the sea and also just their way of life. So I wanted to ask you to tell me a little bit about the decision to make the film, the process of that, and why you chose that area of the world specifically. And then after that, I'd like you to maybe explain your background, which we can go towards.
Great. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I appreciate your kind words about the documentary. In order to answer your question, I think I have to backtrack just a little bit about sort of the initial ideas when I wanted to start my documentary. So I was in university at the time. I was studying in the west of England, in the west coast in Cornwall. And I was researching for my final project, which I wanted to be a documentary. And at the time, it was still COVID. I was very much into freediving. I was joining a freediving community. We were having lots of fun in the water. It was a great and very inspiring group of people. And I just was obsessed with freediving. And it was through the freediving context, actually, that I came across the Bajau people for the first time, because they are somewhat like the OG freedivers. They have absolutely incredible freediving capabilities. And because of those capabilities, they've received quite a bit of media exposure in the past. And the reason for that actually is what I find very interesting. It's a scientific reason, because they have enlarged spleens. So I don't know if you know much about spleens in Bajau people. I didn't when I came first across through the freediving context. So what happens when you freedive is there is a series of physical processes almost happening when you start your breath hold, and it's triggered by when you are submersing your face in water. One of them being, for instance, that your heart rate slows down, then you are saving some oxygen to keep your vital organs alive, while, for instance, in your extremities there is less going on. And another reflex, another trigger is that your spleen contracts, and the spleen stores a lot of oxygenated red blood cells, and it's almost like an oxygen boost. So when it contracts, it allows you to have longer breath hold. And they did this study, sorry, this is a long backtrack, but they did this study where they found that Bajau people, they have bigger spleens than their mainland neighbors, or the mainland people. And I was so fascinated about that fact, that the spleens are on in average 50% larger, and that these people are just genetically designed to be good at freediving. And it's super interesting, because it happens very, very rarely that the human body adapts to our surroundings and we change the genetics. So through evolution, it's normally a plastic response that that our body adapts. So that was the initial interest that I caught with the Bajau people. And fast forward 6 months, I did a lot of research. I became literally obsessed, reading every article out there. I was really studying the group of people. Most probably I should explain who the Bajau people are to give the audience a better idea of sort of where to place them. The Bajau people are an indigenous community that live in Southeast Asia. They are scattered around Southeast Asia. They live in Malaysia, in the Philippines, and in Indonesia. And what is quite special about them is that they used to be completely nomadic. So they were living on houseboats for a long time, and their livelihood consists of fishing. So they are a small-scale fishing community. These days, most of them, they don't live on boats anymore. That lifestyle stopped. And now they live on islands or in coastal regions, and often you find them on villages that are built on stilts in the water. So they live literally on the ocean. So it's a very interesting community, and as an emerging filmmaker, I wanted to capture the freediving process. That was my idea. It didn't quite work out the way that I had planned, because when I finally got there, everything changed. My entire narrative changed. But that was the initial spark, my fascination with their freediving capabilities.
Yeah, that is fascinating. It's crazy. Freediving itself is such a physical stressor, so it's really fascinating to see that they genetically evolved to kind of adapt to their community that they exist within, which is really, really interesting. Can you detail your experience with freediving and the connection, like your connection and education towards the sea, that made you so fascinated with them in the first place, and with this whole realm of the ocean, and again, freediving, photography, filmmaking?
Of course. So I am from Munich. I'm from Germany, the south of Germany, in case my accent didn't gave me away. And Munich is landlocked, so we don't have access to the sea. So when I was a child, I swam in lakes. I went to the mountains. I had the joy of growing up quite closely connected to nature. But it was only until I was around 14 years old when I did my first scuba dive, which was with my family on vacation in Greece. And I immediately fell in love with the experience, the stillness underwater, and seeing the beauty of the sea so closely. So I continued scuba diving as a hobby, and when I turned 18, I did my dive master course, and later on I continued to do my diving instructor course. So quite at an early age, I really literally dived deep into that lifestyle, and I was working on and off around 5 years in the scuba diving industry, and teaching diving courses in beautiful places in the world, in pristine and very remote reefs. And I had the chance to see very healthy ecosystems and beautiful creatures. I had a really good time. And I was working in the Maldives at the time when one of our regular guests, she left me a little point-and-shoot Canon camera. And I had no experience with photography whatsoever. But she left me that camera, and I was interested, and it sparked that curiosity about photography. So I bought myself a little underwater housing for that camera, and I started taking photos of the coral reef and and the fish and nudibranchs and all the critters and creatures inhabiting tropical reefs. And initially, I wanted to show the beauty of our oceans, to share that with others. And then at some point, when I was doing it more and I really got into the technicalities of photography, at some point it wasn't enough for me anymore, because I witnessed firsthand as a scuba diver how our oceans are affected, and how there is coral bleaching and plastic pollution and biodiversity loss and declining fish stocks. So I saw all that and I witnessed all that, and I thought almost it's not genuine if I'm just capturing the beauty of the oceans. So that really created a shift in my thinking, and I wanted to go to school, to university, to study photography and filmmaking, so that I could be a better storyteller and really concentrate on conservation and environmental messages. And afterwards, I found a university degree, the one I mentioned in Cornwall in the UK, which was exactly that. It's still sometimes mind-baffling to me that a course like that exists, because the course was Marine and Natural History Photography and Filmmaking. So our lecturers, they came from backgrounds of documentary, of BBC, National Geographic, and it was a very hands-on course. So we were going scuba diving, telling ocean stories, telling nature stories. And this is where I, for a long time in my life, or maybe even for the first time in my life, I was really finding myself, okay, I am exactly at the place I need to be. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to learn. I want to be a translator between science and nature and what's going on. And I want to translate that into a visual story for the people. Because I love to help with ocean conservation, but I don't have a very scientific brain. So I knew that it wouldn't be my place to work in marine biology, even though I would have loved to as a kid. But when I found this course and I knew that there is a place for me out there in the industry, and there is a need for people that use creative tools to share stories in the end about conservation. We are all in the same boat. So that gave me a really great, satisfying feeling about knowing that I'm on the right path.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious, it's evident if you watch the film that telling the story actually really connects a lot of people to it, and you have reached millions of people with that initial documentary, which is really cool. And I think that the power of story helps people to understand and lead them into that scientific realm, or the realm of understanding as to what we are doing. And it sounds to me that you've always had a symbiotic connection with nature, which drew your curiosity and that deep connection, which I think again is what makes that storytelling so much more authentic, because it's coming from a place of, genuine curiosity and desire to share, which is cool. I think that's fascinating. And I actually grew up near the water on the Atlantic Ocean on the East Coast, and then I had moved to a landlocked state, so we're in slightly different camps there. But I wanted to ask you, because you had you have a good way of sharing and showing that symbiotic relationship to the water, especially in the documentary, and I'm sure in your other work as well. So I wanted to understand a little bit about what that looks like from your vantage. Like, what does a symbiotic relationship look like to the sea, as well as what some of the destructive practices that you captured, what does that look like?
Of course. So the film Salt in Their Veins, just to summarize the story briefly, it's about the contrast almost between very traditional fishing methods and not so traditional fishing methods in these small-scale fishing communities in Indonesia. So the film was shot in Southeast Sulawesi, in very, very remote places. It took me a long time traveling there, and the people that I met, the Bajau people, they have been fishing and they have been living a very ocean-based lifestyle for thousands of years. So it's really ingrained in their DNA. It's what they live, it's what they breathe. They spend their entire lives on the sea. Some of them who will not even go onto the mainland once. So I think it's a difference, because my connection to the sea is a choice. It's a hobby, it's a passion. It's something that I recognize my privileges, that I can do all of that I can work in that industry, that I can travel to see all these beautiful places and to dive. Whereas I found it quite interesting with the Bajau, that relationship to the sea is by birth. They are born on the water. They will learn how to swim, how to dive at a very, very early age. I was very impressed. There is almost no parental supervision when the kids play in the water. There is the young kids, there is even toddlers, there is kids that are slightly older, and everyone just plays in the water. the divers or the kids that are stronger swimmers, they make sure that the small ones aren't left behind, that everyone is safe. And there is just that organic, that natural way of growing up in and around the water. So I think that symbiotic relationship of taking from the ocean, of taking the fish, of hunting shellfish and sea cucumbers and going spearfishing and doing net fishing, it's a very ingrained and organic process in their everyday life. Something that I would never even experience, because for me, I am not coming from the sea, so I do it by choice, and they do it by lifestyle. So I think that was for me the quite an important realization to make. What your second part of the question, what you mentioned about some of their fishing practices that I've witnessed. Before I answer that question, I would like to explain that most Bajau have a very respectful way to fish. So it's a very I don't like to use the word survival, but they fish for survival in the end of the day. It's about fishing to sustain their families. They sell a little bit of fish at the market, but most of the fish that they fish, they would consume themselves. There's a lot of stressors. There is a lot of modern influences that create almost a shift and an imbalance in this group of people. And this group of people, the Bajau, they already have it quite hard. They are quite marginalized. As is, they are stateless. They don't own any land. There are imbalances between the Bajau people and the Indonesians that I've met. So there are problems that the Bajau are faced with. Most of them stemming from environmental issues. So you witness the pollution in the waterways. You witness a declining fish population over the years. There is industrial fishing going on in the same place where the Bajau fish. Big boats with big engines and big nets and way more modern techniques. So there's all these things happening, and it makes it even harder for the Bajau to keep fishing in their traditional ways. So at the end of the day, some individuals, they resort to quite destructive fishing methods.
I'll apologize to the audience because I'm dealing with hotel internet. But you were on track about how the destructive practices in the Bajau community are largely related to survival, and you wanted to emphasize that. If you remember where you are, would you be happy to continue on that track?
Yeah, of course. So I would like to take a moment to explain the differences between the traditional and the not traditional or the non-traditional practices that the Bajau people are using as ways of fishing. So speaking about the traditional practices, the most common one is net fishing. So it's homemade nets. They go on little boats, rowing boats. Sometimes they don't have engines, and they go out to the sea and they hunt fish. So that's quite common, and I think that's something that most of the families do. Then there are families that have specialized in spearfishing, and it's normally something that will be passed down from generation to generation. So if your father is a spearfisherman, the chances are he will teach his sons how to spearfish. And that is quite an interesting way of extracting fish, because it's with homemade sling guns. And in a traditional way, they don't use any other equipment, only some small wooden goggles. They don't use any weights, they don't use any fins, they don't use any wetsuit. So it's quite an intimate way to fish. And it's very deep, and it involves lots of repetitive diving up and down to depths of up to 30 meters or more. So it's a very impressive way of fishing. And then there is lots of gathering as well. So collecting sea urchins, collecting sea cucumbers or shellfish or crustaceans. So that is something that also the women would get involved with, who are normally not doing spearfishing, but they also do net fishing. So these are some of the traditional ways that the Bajau people practice. And because it's a hard time for the Bajau, some of them have resorted to ways that create more catch and more money. And two of these destructive ways that I've seen firsthand is, the first one is potassium cyanide fishing, and the second one is dynamite fishing. With potassium cyanide, it's a chemical that will be filled in a water bottle, and the divers, they dive down and squirt the chemical into the reef. And this chemical stuns marine life, so it actually doesn't kill it straight away. It stuns it, and then they can collect the fish quite easily and sell this to middlemen. And cyanide fishing is quite a popular way of fishing when it comes to the live fish trade. So it means that the aim is not to kill the fish, but to keep the fish alive during the travels until it reaches the final destination. And it is often used for the aquarium trade, especially with tropical reef extraction, as well as live seafood restaurants, which is a trend that has been growing over the last years. It is quite common in places like Hong Kong or other Asian countries predominantly. And it is a type of restaurant where you choose your fish in front of your eyes from a tank, and it will get killed on the spot. So it's a bit more fancy, the seafood is more fresh this way. In fact, it comes from a bad place and a destructive way of fishing. There hasn't been done a lot of studies and research whether the consumer will be affected by consuming fish that is caught using cyanide fishing, using a chemical. They believe the study that has done couldn't find any harm to the consumer. However, there's a lot of harm for the coral reef. Even though the coral doesn't die instantly, but it is a long-term process where coral will start dying because of the impact of the chemical. So that is something that is quite lucrative for Bajau people, and I've seen quite a few families being involved with this type of fishing. And the other destructive fishing method that I came across is dynamite fishing. So dynamite fishing, also known as blast fishing, it's quite self-explanatory. It's using dynamite to kill fish. And we're talking about homemade grenades, so it's all a bit makeshift. It's all very dangerous because accidents happen. Sometimes bombs go off. Sometimes people die in the process of making these bombs. What happens is they go on the boats and they throw these. They burn the bottle and they throw it in the water. Depending on how big the bomb is and how much dynamite they used, this might kill anything up to a 30-meter radius, or the depth from the surface all the way down to 30 meters. So it's incredibly destructive, and not just dangerous for the Bajau people or all the dynamite fishermen out there that use this practice, but of course it's also very dangerous for the reefs because coral as well as fish die this way. So I wanted to add that even though these methods exist, the Bajau know how bad they are. It's not a matter of being uneducated. It's a matter of not really looking into the long-term future and thinking about generations to come, and knowing that they know this will have an impact, but it's about the fact that they see a way of making money, about providing for the family today. They don't think too much about tomorrow. So that's the sensitivity about how can I phrase this in a way that it reflects the film Salt in Their Veins and also my own experience witnessing them. I feel it's so hard to blame. I think it's so hard to assign any or to create blame, to point fingers, or even to victimize. There is no wrong, there is no right. It's just a way to make money. So I wanted to emphasize on that fact that I think that as a person who was trying to show their story and tell their story. It was not my place to have an opinion. It was only my place to observe and share that message with other people who might be interested in that.
Well, I think that's that comes across, and you're capturing and protecting the integrity of those people, which I appreciate. And I believe that, of course, most people in the world are simply trying to do what's best for their family and to keep themselves going, especially in an area where that's your way of living. So I do appreciate you protecting that integrity. On a deeper scale, there's major, and I'm not sure what your knowledge is of this specifically, but there seems to be non-integral practices happening more on a global scale, where they're not concerned about the environment and they just are trying to exploit, not referring to those to the small community of the Bajau people, but just on a global scale, these larger companies that are selling these products. Do you have any sort of background or oversight, let's say, on those things that are occurring with the coral reefs on a large scale, or is there a lot of overfishing or just non-protection of the environment or plastic pollution? What do you think is happening on a large scale that we can hopefully make changes on going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point that you mentioned, because we cannot really look at small-scale fishermen without looking at the larger fishing and the big fishing industry that is going on. There is so much destruction happening through industrial-sized fishing methods that it's very hard to compare the one with the other. And I think it's no secret to any one of us that we are struggling with fish stocks that even it's not going to be a sustainable way of a food income for generations to come. We know how harmful some of the other ways of fish extractions are, for instance, aquaculture, how this is also causing a lot of pollution in the sea. So I don't think there is never going to be a great solution. And I believe that we can, to a certain extent, do some small individual choices that are maybe informed, be mindful about the seafood and the fish that we consume. I'm not asking everyone to stop eating fish, just to have a bit of a mindset of mindfulness. Maybe we don't need to eat fish every day. Maybe we want to make informed decisions about where our seafood is coming from. I think that in general there is a huge disconnect in the modern societies, especially urban societies, where we are so disconnected from nature and we are so disconnected from our food sources and that is a problem. We go to a convenience store to buy our food, where in fact there is nothing convenient about creating food and going hunting and planting and harvesting our food. In fact, it's not convenient at all. There is one scene in Salt in Their Veins that I was really it was quite important to me to include, which is sort of the entire process from sea all the way down to the plate. So the Bajau, they have to leave their homes on a high tide because their houses are sitting on the tidal zone, so they can't always go fishing. They have to live very much in the rhythm of the tides. So they go on a high tide. They have to take their equipment. They go fishing. Maybe they catch 5 fish. Maybe they catch 10. Maybe they catch none. So it's dependent. It's dependent on the weather. It's dependent on the waves. On a lot of factors. On the season. They come home, they have to gut the fish, they have to prepare it, they have to cook it, they have to buy the rice from nearby islands. So there is this entire process that is going on just to prepare dinner. And I think that is quite special and quite significant, because we unfortunately have lost that identity to our food. And I'm not asking everyone to go and spearfish or fish their own fish now, but I think what really helps for us living in modern societies and modern worlds is that we just be a bit more mindful, and hopefully we can connect a little bit more to nature and connect more to our resources. and go voting, making sure that we support politicians that make regulations that are protecting the environment, and there needs to be change happening in the large scale. We can do only so much, and as individuals, and everything that we can do is great, but there needs to be change from on a larger scale happening just as much.
Well, I do think we've lost some of that symbiotic connection. And when you get even to spend time in nature or spend time in the ocean, surfing, freediving, whatever it may be, you start to really adapt back to those rhythms if you take the time to reflect and realize that we are living in a fast, advanced, profit-driven world that is exploitative by nature, because and it doesn't really have it does have a choice, but in a way it doesn't, because we're trying to sustain this crazy overconsumption in this world that we have created. So I want to understand a little more on your end what that connection feels like, to know you, because again, your film is a reflection of the people you're capturing, but it's also a reflection of how you see the world. So to start simply, I want to know, like with freediving, like what was that experience and that feeling? And you can go into, the breath holds, and I just want to know what was that experience like for you to get involved with?
Thank you. I think you're very spot on there, that there is that huge disconnect that a lot of us experience, but luckily through different activities such as going out, going hiking, spending time in the water, surfing, going freediving, we can reclaim some of that connection to nature again. And that is a really beautiful feeling, and it can be in fact quite life-changing. In my personal experience, it started with scuba diving. And scuba diving is an interesting one because in a way it's not really natural. You are dependent on equipment that takes you down to the sea and takes you down to depth. And it's a facilitator for exploring the world and exploring the oceans and witnessing beauty. But at the same time, I've never felt the connection doing scuba diving the same way as I feel free diving. So when I experienced or when I was free diving many years and I started to go when I was scuba diving many years and then I started going free diving, I just thought to myself, wow, this makes so much sense. This is it. This is the most natural and the most connected I've ever felt to the world and to nature. It's almost like a meditation to me. It's quite the opposite of a sport where you're trying to be in a rush and feel the adrenaline, and it's not about action, it's about calmness and relaxation. And it's just as much a mental sport as it is a physical one. Of course, you have to train, you have to prepare your body and slowly work towards being able to dive deeper or hold your breath for longer. It involves a lot of physical training, but it also involves a lot of mental training. You have to overcome your fear. You have to overcome the urge to breathe. And quite frankly, that is one of the hardest things possibly for a human, when your body wants to breathe and you just have to fight that reflex. And you really need to find the comfort in the most discomforting situation. So for me, that was a way of connecting. It was a way of connecting to myself as well. Connecting to other people. Freediving is quite a community-based experience. I found it was very inclusive, very supporting. Genuinely, people really like to see other people succeed, and they're very helpful. And there is no ego. It's a very welcoming and warm type of sport. So anyone who's curious to try it out, I would recommend it with my entire heart to give freediving a go. It's not so much about being the best or being really good at it. It's just about being in the element. You feel the water in your face and around your body. It's calming, it's thrilling, and it's very meditative at the same time.
I appreciate you sharing. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, my brother actually has a freediving cert, and I would like to do something similar. It's when he surfs and everything he does is connected to the water, and I had moved to the desert, so I'm in a way I actually miss being closer to water because that's how I grew up. Before I continue to ask you a little bit more about the film or the specific questions, forgive me for asking sort of a meditative question, but why do you think, what does that connection to the water feel like for you growing up in a place that you weren't near that? What do you think there's something just so different about it, like on a personal level, that you connect to so deeply that you even want to share stories about it and protect it? What was so compelling internally and maybe even externally about being near the sea and being near salt water that drew you away from where you were originally raised?
I was thinking about the whys and the reasons myself a lot, and I haven't really found the answer yet. It's just something that felt so intuitive, something that I've never second guessed, or I couldn't easily see any reasons or really make sense with just my rational or apply a rational way of thinking to that. It's just something that I never second guessed when I started being more developing a career in diving, and I started working full time with the water. I never for a single moment questioned that path or thought how funny that I have this connection. It just always felt so organic and natural that I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, that's a good answer. I admire that because I also admire like Wim Hof a lot. I know his breath work is very different than like a free diving type of breath work, but I also find Wim, from what I've listened to be just such a student of feeling and a student of nature that there's not always that deep analysis that we also fall into in our modern world, where everything has to have a reason outside of like a deep feeling or a deep intuitive knowing. So I actually really appreciate the way that you answered that, which leads me into kind of asking about leads me into asking about the title of your film. Was that just an intuitive thing? Salt in Their Veins. It's a deep title. It has a poetic ring to it. Was there a specific reason you landed on that, or is it just something that felt natural to place on the film?
So I decided on the title "Salt in Their Veins" as a way to expressing how I think that there is salt water running in the veins. It's a very deeply ingrained feeling that the Bajau have, and this relationship with the ocean is so deeply ingrained that it's by birth. That's sort of going back to one of the earlier points that I mentioned. It's while a lot of people have that strong connect by choice, for the Bajau it's by birth, and I think that I was hoping that with the title I would sort of imply that it's something so genetic that it's going through the veins, the salt water. That was my intent, naming the film that way.
And how did you get them to trust you and to allow you to capture their way of life? Was there any difficulty there, or was it just very natural because they trusted your intentions?
Well, I'm happy to share more about the initial approach, how I was first rocking up at their village, and how the trust sort of slowly started. So when I decided on my subject, that I wanted to film the Bajau and film their freediving and spearfishing, moments with the Bajau, I reached out to a producer. He's British. His name is Sam Mansfield, and he was shooting with the BBC a documentary in Indonesia, which is called Hunters of the South Seas. And in this documentary, there's three episodes. In one of the episodes, what the Bajaus are being pictured. And I thought, why not? I'm going to reach out to Sam Mansfield and ask some questions about the access, the location, and if he can pass along some helpful advice. And he turned out to be incredibly helpful, and he gave me the location of the filming where everything took place. So I thought, okay, this is a great starting point for myself. Why not choose the same location? This means that they already know a little bit about filming. This village has already experienced that. And since I didn't have any local contacts that I could pre-contact through a phone or through a call, I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go there. So I was by myself, traveling for, I think it was 4 days from London. So it was very remote, and I just rocked up. I had a photo of Sam Mansfield on my phone, and I asked the villagers to bring me to a family. He gave me the local contact too. Mm-hmm. And I was just knocking on the bamboo door and said, okay, here I am. And the trust, of course, didn't progress. It was a slow progression. I didn't feel comfortable at first to stay with them in the village. So I organized to stay at a homestay in one of the nearby islands, and daily I was doing trips back and forth where I started to meet the Bajau. Eventually, one of the Bajau families that I was spending a lot of time with, they offered that I can sleep in their house. So I was very grateful, and I accepted the offer. So this was after 5 days, I believe, of day trips. I ended up with one of the families, and of course I am not expecting to stay somewhere for free. So it was a paid service. I was eating with them. I was sleeping in their house, even though it wasn't a lot of money at all. But I still, of course, I paid for accommodation just as I would in any other scenario as a tourist, as a foreigner. But it was not like a hotel. I was sleeping on the floor with the family. I was playing with the kids. We were having a lot of fun. So slowly, we started to have that initial phase of getting to know each other and befriending each other as well. I didn't, on my first visit, film them whatsoever. I only took photographs because I thought it was a bit more, it wasn't so full on. Taking a photograph of someone versus having a film camera constantly following every step of their day, it felt there was a big difference. I had a little pocket printer with me, so I was able to print out the photographs of the families and of the kids. And I think through that gesture, everyone loved to be in front of the camera, because having a photograph of their kids that they can hang on their wall was a very valuable possession for some of the families, and I think they really appreciated that. So my first trip, I only took photos. I came in total 3 times, so I was returning a few months later. And this time I didn't come alone. I had my boyfriend at the time, who was there as an extra support. And that was great because we were able to talk to more villagers. We were also meeting some of the other characters that I didn't meet before, the ones that were doing dynamite fishing and cyanide fishing. We were really getting to know the entire village. And in this particular filming spots, there's around 1,500 Bajau living. So it takes some time to, know how the ropes work. And during this time, I started setting up interviews and I started filming. So I progressed from still photography to the moving image. And I was quite happy with the material and the footage I was able to gather. But for some reason, I wanted to return a 3rd time because I received some inside information about a place where there's a lot of dynamite fishing. And I wanted to come back to dive deeper into that subject matter and really speak to the dynamite fishermen and ask them and learn more about that practice. So on my third and last time, I was focusing only on dynamite fishing, and this time it was I was just by myself again. During this time, though, I had established contact, so it was a little bit easier because I was not a stranger at this time. I was already a bit of a familiar face, so it was easier to have them open up in front of the camera. And also something that I wanted to add during this process is that I believe that my gender helped me also to gain trust. And this is something that I talked with a photographer. Her name is Kat Vinton. She's an ethnographic photographer in the UK, and she's absolutely incredible. She produces stunning pieces of work. And I had a conversation with her where she was saying that often the industry is quite male, it's quite dominantly male. There's a lot of male figures in the filming world, in the photography world, but that we really can play being a woman to our advantage, especially when we're working with remote communities, because as a female, I felt like the families, the Bajau families, they were receiving me with open arms. I was not a threat. I was sleeping in the room with all the girls and all the children, and I was playing with them. Whereas I think that also because they are quite conservative, the Bajau, they are quite traditional. I don't think that I would have been easily making this access if I was a man traveling by myself. I think they thought that I'm a little bit crazy. Why is this woman doing all this, and why is she traveling by herself? But I think that it worked out for me to gain their trust.
Understood. Yeah, that's an interesting point about being a woman. I do think there might be a level of trust and less threatening presence, but it's really fascinating. And I'm not sure, you might know this about yourself, but it seems that you're approaching these situations with genuine curiosity and integrity, and also giving them space. So I think that is maybe a lot more powerful. And again, you might already know that about yourself, but from what I can gather from our short conversation, you're giving people a lot of space with limited judgment and genuine curiosity, which I just believe to be such a good approach to trying to understand what someone has going on in their life without attaching your own belief system to their to who they are. And
thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. So I want to understand a little bit what you want to do with storytelling going forward, and if it's going to be related to similar topics, if you plan to continue to do films, and if and what that really means to you. Why was story so compelling? Why do you want to share stories? I guess is my question.
My long-term career vision is working in documentary and telling stories that have an impact. So it might sound a bit cheesy, but I believe that's where I see myself being placed the most and have the most job satisfaction, to work in relevant stories that tell stories of stories and species and all kinds of people in situations that maybe wouldn't otherwise have an audience. So that's my aim. I would love to work for conservation storytelling. However, it's not the easiest industry to break in. There's limited funds. It's often not easy for emerging filmmakers to receive funding. Equipment is heavy. Equipment is expensive, not heavy, expensive. So there are some burdens of reaching those goals. I am currently applying for funding to do a follow-up film on dynamite fishing. Not so much focusing on the Bajau, but just looking at the dynamite fishing as a whole, because I uncovered some quite interesting facts about dynamite fishing, and it's it's crazy. There is a whole dynamite mafia almost that is active, and there is so much corruption, and there is so much danger, and there is a lot of harm for the people that are practicing, and there is so much harm for the coral reefs. And I think that there is a huge story there that I would love to tell in the future. Just to give you an idea of the scope of dynamite fishing, when I was in Indonesia, people were going on dynamite trips that would last for 2 weeks, and they would throw a lot of dynamite into the sea. They would have a compressor on the boat, so everything would die, let's say up to 30 meters. And in order to collect all those dead fish, because they don't all float to the surface, they would send especially the young boys, because their body is still a little bit more agile. They would send them diving just off a pipe from the compressors, often breathing contaminated and very bad air. They would have to dive down, do repetitive diving, which is extremely dangerous because of decompression sickness. Diving while going up and down very fast, collecting all this fish. There would be a lot of drugs on the boats because the work is so hard, and they would be on the sea for many days, up to 2 weeks at the time. And then they would meet people on the sea, middlemen, where they sell this fish to. And I think it's so shocking that this exists, and there is accidents happening all the time. People are losing their arms, their legs because the bombs go off, or people are suffering from decompression sickness. And also another thing that I would love to mention from a health aspect, which is completely unresearched, and there is no study that has proven this, but talking to the locals, they told me that eating fish that is caught by dynamite can cause long-term harm. And some of the locals said they don't eat dynamite caught fish because it causes a lot of cancer. And this is something that it's not studied. There is no data that can prove this. This is just talking from locals who have witnessed disease and harm happening for a long time. So I believe that I would love to dive deeper into this subject matter specifically, to share that narrative and that story with others who might never heard of that practice to begin with. So that is my plan for the future. At the moment, I'm working on more commercial projects and other productions, which is also a great way to just stay on the ball and be in the industry, which is a nice way to gain more experience as well.
And I mentioned earlier the documentary Happy People. Have you seen that, or have you heard of it?
I know Werner Herzog, but I haven't seen Happy People. But thanks for the recommendation. I will look into it. What is it about?
So I'll let you research, but he captures the people in the taiga region of Siberia, which I believe is just a giant, like, I'm going to butcher the description, but a giant like landmass of ice, and it's huge, but he captures the way of life, especially of one specific person. It's a very famous documentary, but when you were capturing these people in a really authentic way, in Salt in Their Veins, it gave me, it's a very different scope, but it almost gave me a similar vibe. So that's why I had initially brought that up. So I do suggest checking that out. That was why I brought it up in the first place. So.
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting comparison, and I love documentaries, so I'm definitely add that to the next watch.
And so I want to finish shortly, but I want to understand a little bit about what you feel that the modern world and a lot of people who are disconnected, what they can hopefully learn and take from some of these smaller communities that are still existing in a healthy symbiotic relationship with nature, and they're connected. Is there a lesson that you think that other people can bring into their lives that maybe you've brought into your psyche and your life?
That's a very interesting question. I think that there is a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of indigenous wisdom and knowledge, and we can learn a lot from the Bajau people. They are extremely skilled water people. They know so much about the weather, about the tides, about boat making, about sailing, about spearfishing, about, really sustaining a life on the sea. And I think that it's almost such a shame that this indigenous knowledge it's not getting preserved, because eventually, there is almost a disconnect culturally as well, because life is so hard for the Bajau that a lot of Bajau, they move to the cities to find other work. They try to make more money going farming. So there's a lot of people that move away from that traditional life. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in all these ancient practices that the Bajau have been practicing for thousands of years. So I think we can learn just from that sense a lot. Other things that were sort of like core experiences or core learnings from my time with the Bajau were seeing that almost innocent, that genuine happiness in the children. There's a lot of children, and everyone is just running around, playing, laughing, swimming in the sea, splashing water at each other, and it just feels so real and so innocent. And I think that we have a lot of screens, we have a lot of iPads, we have a lot of phones. So it's a great childhood, and it's a lovely way to see these kids having so much fun in the water, and that really made me happy. But I also want to mention that I left the Bajau, the location, where I was shooting the film. I left with not just that smile, thinking about all the nice experience, but I also left with a tear, because I feel very sad. I feel very sad about the future, the uncertainties, not just for their for their survival, but also for their cultural identity. I feel like almost there is that bitter aftertaste that I know it's only going to be harder for a lot of Bajau, and I know that fishing is going to be harder in today's day and age and today's world with environmental issues going on. And that also made me quite happy to see that that disconnect within the Bajau, the cultural loss, as well as how hard it's going to be. And not that I want to end here on a negative way, but I really try to put that feeling into the end of my movie as well, because I didn't want to sugarcoat anything. I just wanted to give a slice of genuinity. Mm-hmm. Circling back to your initial question, sorry, I got a bit sidetracked. You did ask about what we can learn from the Bajau, and I don't know if it's really my place to say in what way they lead a better life, or in what way they have a better experience. These were just some of the core memories for me, seeing the happiness in the children.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, and I do feel that there's a lot of truth there, and in the modern world we've lost some of that, more simple connection. And again, I used the word a lot, but a more like symbiotic relationship to life itself. And so I appreciate your storytelling and your ability to communicate. And I think it'll go further, and you'll have plenty of good opportunities to continue to share your vision. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having a lovely conversation, sharing ideas, and connecting in that subject. That felt really nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. And I do appreciate your curiosity and ingenuity, and I look forward to following up more and seeing what else you have going on.
Absolutely, and likewise, it's so refreshing. I think curiosity is one of the best personality attributes, to be honest. Having a curiosity for the world, asking questions, wanting to learn more, trying to keep being a student, and just approaching the world and our people and other people and other places with that sense of curiosity. I think in all ways of life, that's always a nice and refreshing way to approach. So thank you as well for your curiosity. It's very much appreciated.
Cool. And thank you for your time, Rita.